Hello everyone and welcome back to day 70 of our F225 hot lap and track guides. Yes, we return this weekend to the Dutch Grand Prix at the Zandvoort circuit. Of course, if you missed out on the last video that went live a couple of days ago from the Hungaroring, I would highly recommend going back and checking it out. Zandvoort though, weirdly, actually, in the Formula 2 cars, one of the easiest tracks I found. I was able to get a pretty quick lap time very, very quickly around this venue because I think ultimately the biggest thing that makes this track difficult in Formula 1 is the gearing, but where you've only got 6 gears rather than 8, in the Formula 2 cars, it becomes quite an easy venue as long as you know what you're doing. Of course, if you're new around here and you don't know what this series is about, I basically go through, I provide you with a race-ready F2 setup inside F125. I talk you around the track, what gears you want to be using, what braking markers you want to be using, and any other kind of helpful nuggets of information I possibly can. And then last but not least, I provide you with a setup. Of course, as always, timestamps will be linked down in the description below if you just want to head to a certain part of this video. A massive thank you to everybody for their continued support on this series. Of course, we are getting very, very close to 15,000 subs as well on the channel. So if you are new and you aren't already, and these videos are helping you out, please do make sure you hit that sub button because it is the best way of supporting us. But yeah, without further ado though, let's head out onto the track and I'll talk you guys around a lap here of Zandvoort. Well, making our way then down in towards the final couple of corners. Third gear through the entrance of the penultimate corner before you activate the DRS and you have got your foot to the floor. Try and keep the car nice and low out of the final corner, but be very, very careful of the pit lane entry line. I would explain that as we get towards the end of the lap. But eyeing up then on the brakes for turn 1, you want to brake at about 75 metres out. I use this kind of weird patch of gravel on the outside. No, I don't really know why the track looks like this either still, but that is your reference marker ready for turn 1. From 6th gear, you want to cycle the car down in towards 2nd as you tip it in, but obviously just be very careful that you don't lock the rears on the way through there. Keep it in 2nd gear then as you try and get nice and early on the throttle, but you can use the exit curb as well. Again, where the F2 cars are a lot less sensitive to curbs than the F1 cars inside F125, use this exit curb because it will be able to find you a little bit of extra time as well there. Back up through 3rd and 4th gear on the exit as we make the way down in towards turn 3. Just blend the throttle out slightly, hug the apex but don't use the curb on the inside there, and then you're going to be back on the anchors once more. Tip it in through the camber, hug the inside line, through 2nd gear on the entrance, get on the throttle nice and early, and then once you get up to the top of the rev range, go back up to 3rd gear off of the corner. Carry the speed then all the way up the hill. You want to bring the car up into 5th gear there. You won't quite reach 6th as you climb up the top, but just be careful that you don't cut this corner too much. And then up through this horrible, horrible turn 7. Turn in just at the end of the Astro on the outside. Sorry, the runoff area on the outside. Completely flat out though through that corner there. Leave it wide open in 5th gear. Try to maximise the run through this next corner again. It is just right in 5th gear, flat out if you nail it, but I like to blend the throttle slightly just to make sure you don't run too wide. Braking just before the 50-metre board though, you're going to go down 2 gears as we tip the car in. Really attack the apex curb as best as you can. Allow the car to run wide on the exit, but don't let it run too wide off the corner. Again, leave it in 3rd though. You want to just blend the throttle through this next hairpin. You never really want to use the brake too much, but yeah, just try and meet the apex, and as soon as you do, once again, get on that loud pedal there. Careful not to run too wide over the exit curb, but once again, activating the DRS as we make our way down in towards Sector 3 then. You want to be spotting the brakes just at the 100-metre board there at the start of this curb. Go from 5th gear all the way down to 2nd on the way in. Again, attack that apex curb as best as you can, and then don't allow the car to run too wide through the stadium section there. Just get on the throttle as you go over the bump on the exit, and then back up through 3rd and 4th gear as we make our way in towards the final couple of turns. 50-metre board down 1 gear once again. Be careful not to take too much apex curb. Again, I would just say avoid it, but once more you can use the exit curb, activate the DRS, and then you are flat out back around towards the start-finish line. Like I said though, you've got to be careful of the pit lane entry line here because for some reason there's a big bump through it. You can just like kind of make it out, but I would always say kind of right where the line is, that is where this bump is inside this game. In fact, if I go over it slowly, I can actually feel it through my wheel ever so slightly as well there. So what I would suggest doing, just to have a bit more consistency, out of this final corner. I would bring the car, give yourself about a foot's margin as well, but just bring the car over to the right-hand side of that pit lane entry line. But yeah, you want to obviously keep the car nice and down low through the camber of that final corner as well, just because it's the quickest line inside F125. But anyway, once you've avoided that then, obviously you're still on the DRS back towards the start-finish line, and that is going to be a lap then of the Zandvoort circuit. Like I said, weirdly, this track kind of suits the F2 cars a lot more than the F1 machines, because you aren't having to mess around too much with the gearing. You know, third gear through a lot of the corners, fifth gear through a lot of the corners. You're having to change gear a lot less around this circuit. Let's head back to the pit lane though, and I'll talk you guys through the setup. Well, unfortunately, my leaderboard time didn't save for some reason. Again, the F1 servers seem to be having issues, but yeah, that 117.68, I believe, would have put us just about 40th in the world then at the moment. So yeah, very happy with that lap time. And honestly, I reckon if I absolutely sweated it out, I could probably get top 10 in the world around this circuit. Yeah, I reckon a 117.3 is doable. But of course, I try not to do the absolute maximum attack laps possible, because ultimately you can't learn as much from that, especially if you're just a beginner to the F1 games as well. Taking a look though at our setup then, 48.39 for your front and rear wing. I've seen people running an even more extreme offset around here. I think I saw like 48.32 on one setup, but I'm running 39. It just gives you that little bit more stability through the corners. Again, front wing completely dictates cornering, rear wing completely dictates straight line speed, but the difference between the two really does dictate obviously how stable the car is, and especially in a race around Zandvoort, where this is a venue where there is such little room for error. 48.39 is what I felt comfortable with. 150 though for your on and off throttle diff. Again, actually running the off throttle slightly more locked than we do around a lot of venues. You know, through Sector 2, there's a lot of corners where you're kind of just managing the throttle and the brake pedal a little bit. So just keeping that off throttle diff slightly more locked gives you the bite through the corner, but obviously gives you a little bit of stability as well there. Completely minimum camber and toe angles. Again, that's just the default with the F2 cars on this game. 36.15 for your front and rear suspension. But again, just like Hungary, very firm anti-roll bars as well. Running slightly softer on the rear just to give the car the little bit of squat it needs through the turn 7, obviously the flat out right-hander at the top of the circuit. You know, it just kind of allows the back end to grip down, gives you a bit more rotation as well, and works really nicely. And as you can see, 22.50 for your ride height. Again, where the F2 cars just seem to be able to handle curbs on this game. You know, the penultimate corner, the exit there, through a couple of the other turns as well around the rest of the lap. You can take a lot more curb than you can in the F1 machines. That being said, though, there's a lot of curbs you still don't want to go near, because Zandvoort is lethal with them. 55-100 for your brake bias and pressure. Again, just use the default that works well for you on this game. It can be a little bit difficult to try and not lock up the rears in a couple of places, so I would say move the bias up slightly more forward, and then obviously start reducing the pressure if you're still struggling with it as well. And then last but not least, 23.5 front PSI, 20.5 on the rear. Again, in the F2 cars, this circuit shouldn't be too tire consuming. So yeah, just be careful with it, manage it if you're really struggling. And of course, if you are, up the rear pressures a little bit, up the front pressures a bit more. And obviously, if you want a bit of a bias one side as well, I would say you probably want to run a half a PSI extra on the left-hand side than the right, because that will just give you a bit more kind of even spread of tyre wear over the course of the car as well. But ultimately for me, I haven't found it to be an issue around this circuit when I have done some race testing as well there. Hopefully this video has helped you out though. If it does, please do make sure you leave a like, get yourself subscribed, and we'll be back very soon, obviously out of the Temple of Speed. But for now, I'm going to leave you guys with a hot lap.